Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. I am very excited to be joined by Mike Malatesta, who is the host of his own podcast, How Did It Happen? An entrepreneur, investor, author, speaker, trusted advisor, board member. Oh my gosh, the list goes on and on and on. And I'm absolutely thrilled that he's joining me here today. Mike, welcome to the program.
Shalom. Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So, Mike, before we sort of dive into your book and your I know what is your passion, I want to get to know the person behind the microphone. How did you get into all of this amazing work that you're doing today?
Well, professionally, I became an entrepreneur when I was 26, after being fired from a job that I thought I might one day be the CEO, of the company. I was kind of moving up quickly, and I started as a management trainee, so I didn't have any reason to believe this, Shalom. But I thought, I was saying yes to everything. I was moving around. I was doing well, and then instead of becoming the CEO, I got fired, and I was 26 at the time, and I just didn't really know what to do with myself. And fortunately, through a series of like sort of chance encounters and chance reach outs, I was able to partner with just the greatest person that I've ever met, and a couple of other folks, and we started a waste, an environmental services waste disposal company in 1992. So, we started from nothing. We bootstrapped that company, right off the ground, and it was just a really amazing story of grit and also a lot of lessons learned and strong backs. My partner would always say it's a good thing we had strong backs because our brains weren't, that strong. And we grew that business over 22 years consistently until we sold it in 2015. And it was about a $45 million company at the time. And then a couple of years later, I started another company sort of like it with a private equity partner. And we had that business for 3 years, and then we were able to sell it. So from a professional level, that's sort of the really short story. Podcasting, I started my podcast 3 years ago with two goals. One was to really explore my curiosity about success. And the second was to really dig deep into stories of successful people and get to the clues that I can share with my audience to help inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in them. And then the book came along a little bit later after that, and it was really something I'd been working on for almost at least a decade, but not really working on it because I was sort of scatterbrained about it, and just got focused on that, got some help putting a system together that I could follow. And a year later, I was finished with the book. And 6 months after that, it came out just a couple of weeks ago.
Awesome. Well, it's exciting to see what you're doing. And congratulations on it. And I know that you've got this awesome book, and I absolutely love the title, Owner Shift, How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck. Can you tell us the reason behind the title?
Yeah. So for at least the first 10 years of my entrepreneurial career, I sort of prided myself on being a selfless leader, at least how I defined it, Shalom. And that was that I put everybody else first. I put myself last, but I wasn't sure I was doing that out of a with selfless intention. I think I was, but I think also I kind of wanted to be the hero. I kind of wanted to set things up where things had to run through me or past me or by me so that I could, put my little stamp of approval on it or whatever and make myself feel good about what I was doing. But the reality was that that was creating a life for me that I didn't want. It was, I was getting exactly what I asked for, but I wasn't liking it anymore. All this stuff coming at me was frustrating, and it was making me angry, and it wasn't what I thought I deserved. And I just, it just ground away at me. And later I realized that, in order for me to be a good selfless leader, I had to be selfish first. I had to really understand what I wanted. I had to understand what the future that I wanted to create would look like. And I wanted to understand how I would want to feel when when that future was accomplish. And so that's what I mean by getting selfish is it really worked for me to get clear. And once I was clear, I was able to be a much better leader and a much better entrepreneur. I was able to do my job.
Absolutely. I'm chatting with Mike Malestera, who wrote the fantastic book, Owner's Shift, How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck. And I know that the book is filled with roller coasters of the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur, both personally as well as professionally. And as you've been saying, at the end, being selfish was the key to becoming selfless. Yes. And I know between the book as well as, of course, on the awesome podcast, which I did listen to a little bit, I'm looking forward to spending more time. How Did It Happen? You've interviewed more than 200 top entrepreneurs. And I know that you're a storyteller, I think, like I am as well. So it's great. So we've got about a minute remaining, and I want to give you the opportunity to share real quick just one of the stories that inspire you. And then when we come back after the break, we'll continue talking.
Sure. One of the stories that inspired me the most was Sam Schmitz. And Sam was an Indy race car driver, and he was having some success. He'd won a race, and he was, sort of on his way up. And in practice for a race one day, he smashed into the wall and he crashed his car. And in a matter of 1 minute, he went from being on top of the world to a quadriplegic. And what's so interesting about his story, though, is that he didn't stop for a second. Like, his first thought was, I'm going to walk my daughter down the aisle when she gets married. She was, I believe, 7.
That's a powerful message. And I want to continue talking about some of that inspiration and some of those messages, but a very quick break here on the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. We'll be right back and get down to business in just a moment. Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. I'm returning with Mike Malatesta, who's an entrepreneur, author, innovator, and trusted advisor. And we've been chatting about his new book called Owner's Shift, How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck, as well as his podcast. And we were just saying during the break that I asked him to unpack inspirational stories in 60 seconds or less. Probably not the best thing to do. But again, you've had over 200 people on the podcast, which is awesome. So again, one more time, how can people learn about it, and what can they expect from the podcast if they are so kind to rate, review, and share?
Sure. Well, thank you. The podcast is called How Did It Happen? You can find it on any podcast platform. And in it, almost every episode, I explore stories of success by going really, really deep into the stories that made the person who they are. And my goal is to, as I said before, inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in everybody that's listening, because everyone's got greatness inside of them, and everyone can be as successful as they want to be. I'm just gonna show you the ways that some people have done it, and then it's up to you to take it and make it what you will.
That's exactly what it is, and that's helpful. And I know that our listeners can certainly learn a lot by listening to your podcast, How Did It Happen, as well as reading that book, Owner's Shift. But real quick, before we wrap up the program today, Mike, you've already shared some really helpful lessons for entrepreneurs, frankly, for all professionals, which is great. But what is the one bit of advice that you would have for an entrepreneur tuning in, especially as we have this conversation in mid to late December, that you hope that people maybe can put into action, a homework assignment for the new year, New Year's resolution, if you will, that you think will put them in a better place?
I would say never stop thinking big. In the book, I go through the four stages of being an entrepreneur. And the first one is dream. And everybody gets into it with a dream, right? The dream is that they're going to, change the world and have a lot of freedom, and they're going to impact many, many lives. And they're just going to have financial success and all this success. And a lot of times the dream starts to fade after a while because everything else starts to get in the way, Shalom. And with this book, I want to inspire people to, 1, go big, 2, keep going big, 3, recognize that getting into the grind and even becoming broken is normal and it's okay, but it's not a place where you should stop, expire, turn back, get small, change your thinking. There's a way to break through, and I want to teach people how to continue to break through and maximize their capabilities.
One of the best ways that they could do it is by getting in touch with you, purchasing a copy of the book, and subscribing to the podcast. So, Mike, that's a lot over there, and I want to make sure our listeners know where they can go. You've got a website and a couple of places I'm sure you want to send our listeners to, who no doubt are nodding their heads furiously. How can people get a hold of you, Mike Malatesta?
The best place to find out all about me is at my website, Mike, M-I-K-E, Malatesta, MALATESTA.com. You can find everything there, the podcast, the book, my blog, my newsletter, whatever you want. You can contact me, and you can also look me up on LinkedIn. I'm active there as well.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, I appreciate you sharing your expertise with all of our listeners. I hope everybody will subscribe to your podcast, and I certainly will as well. And wishing you happy holidays and a happy new year. And to all of our listeners, be sure you subscribe, rate, review, and share on our podcast. It's called Get Down to Business. It can be found wherever your favorite podcast can be found. And we have a great couple of weeks in store, some fantastic guests, entrepreneurs, subject matter experts. And be sure to get on my website, shalomklein.com, and follow me on Twitter at Shalom Klein. I'm going to be posting links to all of our guests from the show today. Be sure to check out our sponsors, Tom Mirabali from healthplanchicago.com. You heard from him earlier in the program. And again, I'll be posting some more tips on LinkedIn. I know I talked about that earlier in the program, and all of those bits of advice and some helpful resources will be available on the website as well. So wishing you all a great week ahead, and to success. That's a wrap. Let's get down to business. Have a great week.